computer. Right, I think it's doing it. Okay, amazing. So a very warm welcome to today's podcast, Samantha. I am very excited for today's conversation, which is a very important topic, and we've been trying to make this happen and navigate time zones and all of those things, and we are finally here. We are cozy. For those watching on the video, we've got our cozies, I've got my tea, we've got our pets.
Feeling it, yeah.
And we are ready to go. So just to introduce Samantha, and then I will pass over to you to add anything to that, and then we'll get into the conversation today. So Samantha is a menstrual mental health specialist dedicated to revolutionising our understanding of the mind-body connection, particularly within the context of the female cycle, with a focus on promoting cycle homeostasis through informed decision-making and self-discovery. Samantha aims to empower women to navigate their menstrual health confidently. Her mission extends beyond individual empowerment to drive systemic change in the medical field, advocating for improved care and understanding for uterine-born women worldwide. Through her work, Samantha is committed to reshaping the landscape of women's health and emotional well-being, one topic at a time. That is such a beautiful bio, and I love the impact that you are having on the world. Like, it's so needed. So,
oh my gosh,
is there anything that you'd like
interesting
to add?
that like when I hear it, it almost makes me want to cry, because that's what I wanted to hear from somebody when I needed it, right? And it just reminds me exactly what you said. Like, it's so needed, and it's, I don't know if I'll ever get tired of hearing it back to me, and that it's me, right? It's like, wait, that's me. It's so crazy, but thank you, and thank you for your welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. So shall we dive in? So I do have a list of questions, but we can, obviously feel free to add more in.
Ask whatever you want, anything, whatever, because I know that you and I have talked too, right? And so it's like anything that comes to your brain, I would love to just see what comes out of mine.
Amazing. Let's do that. Let's see what comes out of my brain and your brain. Yeah. Let's do it. Okay, so I would love to know what inspired you to specialize in menstrual mental health, and how do you see this field evolving in future?
Okay, so the inspiration is like not a great story, right? Because the inspiration came from me getting to the point of being completely suicidal, right? Like completely, where there was so many times that I just felt like I couldn't do it and couldn't do it and couldn't do it. And having gone to OBGYN at some point and saying, hey, I think this might be cycle related. And them being like, no, just go shopping during your cycle. Like when you feel the worst, my OB actually said, go shopping during your cycle and just make yourself happy for a couple of days, figure it out, and you'll be okay.
Wow.
And then going to therapist and having therapists not be on board as well. And thinking that talk therapy or this or that was going to help. And you could just keep going forever, but always keep feeling like you're missing the mark, right? And then going back to OB, and OB saying, well, you know what, maybe you just need Prozac, right? And even if you just need it during that part of your cycle, just take the Prozac, you'll be fine. And then don't take it the rest of the month. So PR on yourself. And I'm like, that didn't feel right. And then going forward to another therapist and saying, listen, I really feel like something's wrong. And he asked me the questions for the bipolar screening. And if you've ever been asked those questions, they're so ambiguous that it's hard not to have a yes for all of them. And so in session 1, without knowing me, without knowing my history, without knowing anything about me, he said, I think that you're probably bipolar. And that's why you constantly feel like you can't get a grip on your up and down emotions. And I knew myself enough to know that that wasn't the case. But that was all I knew at the time. And I did get to the point where I went back to my OB and I told her again, I said, I feel like this is cyclical. I feel like something's wrong. And she gave me progesterone. She gave me a script for progesterone this time. And she said, well, why don't you just experiment a little bit with taking this, right? And so I took the progesterone home and I put it in my cupboard. And I was at the point at that point because of some traumas that had happened in my life that I was doing so badly that I thought to myself, if I take this and it goes the wrong way, I won't be on the earth anymore. Like that's just it. Like I was at that precipice in my life emotionally that I knew the wrong step was the wrong step. There was huge amount of fear, sadness, overwhelm, and self untrust, right? Because when you are lost cyclically, and I'm just going to word it that way for lack of better wording, when you are lost cyclically, you get to a point where you start feeling okay, and then you believe that you beat the demon, and you believe that things are going to be okay. And for some reason, that part of our cycle erases the knowledge that this is cyclical. And all of a sudden it comes back, and it is almost like what was erased is now a flood. Because when you're here in that good part of your cycle, I don't know why, you just think I'm okay now. Things are going to be okay. I don't know what I did differently, but I've got this, right? And then you hit the other side of that and you realize, no. And you remember every single time before that you ever thought you were going to be okay. And you just think, why did I ever think that? I'm never going to leave this place. I'm never going to not get. And that's where that lots of hope and suicidal tendency will come in, because you feel like you're never going to get out of here. You've tried to get answers, you've tried medications, you've tried things, and nothing's going to happen. So I'm staring at this progesterone like, if I have one more thing that takes away the confidence or hope, I'm never going to make it through that. And I remember opening my phone that day and opening a table in my notes and just putting today's date and saying suicide, right? And just like that. And that was it. And I just thought, I need to take notes for myself. And I was so lost, and I'm freaking ADD, right? So journaling and all that stuff never lasted. But one word was okay. And so that's what started it, was all of these feelings, all of those moments leading up to me starting to take notes in my phone while staring at the progesterone, knowing I couldn't take it, and just saying, okay, data, we need data. And I am not a database person, so I don't know where that thought came in my head. And I started tracking, and I started tracking using 5 words or less. And that's kind of where this started. I was able to look, and I was able to see, and then I was able to kind of be like, oh, this, and then this, and then this. And okay, then I started connecting the dots. What thought led to what action led to what trigger went to what, and why did the same trigger not trigger me at all the different times? And it was deeper than I ever realized, because we all know, oh, we're triggered during PMS, but I didn't realize how much deeper it actually goes than that. And that was where, after like 6 months, I started realizing, holy shit, there's more here than we know. And that's when I started thinking, this needs to be revolutionized. This needs to be changed. If at one point, any of the places I went to would have said, do you track your cycle? But not for pregnancy, not for blood. Do you track your cycle so that you can understand yourself better when you're up, when you're down, how you're affected at the different times, what your spending is like? Like, every single thing is more correlated to our cycle than we know. And it's different for every woman based on our lives, our traumas, our ability to hold or not hold, or process or not process, right? So if more and more doctors know this, and more therapists know this, and we are educated from the time that we are young, hey, I know you're feeling that way today, but let's reflect on where you are and where it's coming from. Hey, I know today feels like a really good day to go out and spend 80 grand, but maybe it's not. It could be a part of your cycle that's super confident, right? And so how are we sabotaging ourselves even in the good times, right? And that's what's left out of the conversation. So I really do want to get into all these places and revolutionize intake for uterine-based humans. Like, that just has to happen. And so that's my mission. It might have been a little longer than I even thought that I was going to say, but that's
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. It completely resonates. I think I've shared this with you. I remember having a conversation with my mum, and I said to her, like, I was talking about my hormones, and she said, "Oh yeah, when you were 15, you were a nightmare." She said to me, she said, "I even said to you once, it's okay to have hormones, but it's not okay to be a bitch." And your dog is
Yeah.
getting involved. He's so
Oh
gorgeous.
my God, he's so funny. So jealous that I'm
Love
talking to
him.
him.
Oh, hello. You can talk to us too. I'm sure you know all about hormones. I'm sure you're very wise.
Don't hang up on her. He's like stepping on my screen.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. So hearing you say that in your mission, like it really does resonate. And I think it will resonate with so many people listening that like we need this education. Um, it needs to be had sooner because we're reaching I know for a lot of women, like these conversations aren't even had until, if we're lucky in our 30s, if not in our 40s. And like these conversations need to be had sooner, and we need to start having this ripple effect into these, institutions. I mean, your story mirrors my anxiety journey so much. I went to the doctors and it was just take these beta blockers, just take them, and then you can just numb all the sensations, and then you can just carry on with your life. And it sounds like
oh,
you had that soul led moment of like, there's more here. There's something else
yeah.
going on here. There's more here. And you're looking at this medication, but your soul speaks, and it's like, there's something more here. Like, I'm missing something. Where do I need to go? Please guide me. Yeah, it sounds like we've had really similar journeys there. So thank you so much for sharing that. It really resonated with my anxiety journey, and also with my hormonal journey as well. I've been on, and I've had those moments where I'm like, why have I suddenly turned into this crazy person? Like, what is going on? So yeah, thank you for the work that you do.
It's like so I have to breathe and like there's not a woman that I've talked to that hasn't resonated in some way. And this is even if they haven't had such a severe cycle story. But like each one will be like, oh my God, I do go on a spending spree every whatever,
Mhm.
this often, or I do this. Oh my gosh, even if it's that light, it's something for us to be aware of, and we're just not because that's not what we're taught, especially to look into the parts that we're feeling good, right? Why do we look into the parts that we're feeling good? We don't. We just are thankful to be feeling good, right? And we don't really say, wow, how does my feeling good actually affect me homeostatically for the rest of the cycle? And it's a very interesting. It's so insane. And actually, like I have a name on TikTok called the follicular bitch because I realized how much the good part of me wasn't good. Right. And it was just mind blowing. Like that whole thing was just absolutely insane. So, yeah.
I forgot to pick up on this. I also love that you did what was authentic to you with the data. So you were like, right, well, I'm not going to journal, but what I will do is 1 word or 5 words. And I know that works for me. So what's authentic to me, and how do I then translate this? I'm hearing data, I need data, into what works for me. Mine was the opposite. I like to journal. I eat like long, like expressive things. And then as I was looking back through my journal, I was like, oh, this is happening again. Didn't this happen last month? And then as I was looking back through my journal, I was like, oh, hang on, data. Yeah, this is like the same time in the month. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then we then connected and had a conversation about that. And I was like, okay, this now makes sense.
When I work with women and I have them track and they like to journal, I try to ask them to do so. What I have is the super simple tracking system based on what I said. There's like, I think I added a sixth column, but it's very, very columny and it's easy to track the data at one glimpse. So you don't have to have any time. You don't have to have like anything space to be able to read. You don't have to look back through all of your thoughts and emotions if you're not ready for that, or you don't have space within yourself for that. And so, like area 1 is your function level, like 0 through 10. What's your functioning level executively that day? So where am I functioning? How fast is my thoughts moving? What is my ability to get up and get something accomplished today, right? And then actually follow through and do it. So my functioning level is 0 to 10. And then I also ask people to write down prevailing thought of the day and prevailing feeling of the day. So feeling, maybe I feel like I want to die, right? But what are the thoughts behind that? So are the thoughts inward, outward? What is the kind of the most prevailing thought of the day? So we're looking for each section to have 5 words or less, right? Of what is the prevailing thought. So the prevailing thought is I'm a loser, I'm never going to make it. Maybe that's not 5, but you figure out how to write it shortly for yourself. And then the next section is going to be what are any actions that I took because of this? And what are any actions that happened through the day that may have made the thought more, okay, or triggered the thought? And it's hard to use the word trigger because I don't always mean trigger in the way that it means for everybody. Because sometimes is my kid said happy birthday. You know what I mean? Maybe it was a good, maybe your prevailing feeling of the day was I felt so loving today. So what triggered that love, right? So what was the action that happened to make it happen? And I feel like when you look back at it this way, oh, and then the last one was physical feelings. That's what I added, physical feelings. So what physical feeling was happening to you? Some people don't have a cycle anymore physically. And so there's still feelings in the body that you get that may or may not change. And, or how do we, sometimes our thoughts and feelings cyclically actually have a body that they correlate to, like a body part within you. So you can feel where your feelings are coming from and kind of it'll help you decipher, are they head feelings or body feelings? So are they more thought feelings and do feelings, or are they more feel feelings, right? And so when you have this data and you can look at one sheet and it's got 30 days worth of data on one sheet, you can quickly scan it and you can kind of see right away where your flow is and how it works. And then I'll have somebody, like you like to journal, I'll have them write A2 the same way you would in a book, like a reference. And on A2, you go to your journal and then you can journal out everything. So for those who like to journal, the opportunity is there to have this concise information and yet journal. Or you journal and at the top of each page, you write this concise information. And that way you can kind of flip book through it and you'll be able to see your patterns very quickly without having to read the entire thing. And if you choose to, then you choose to. Does that make sense?
It's making me think of I did a degree in psychology, quantitative and qualitative evidence. It's literally that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of quantifying it in the short form and then getting
Right.
the long form as well. Yeah, I love that.
Right. And that way you're able to have that data really at a glance for yourself. And you can look back at 6 months worth of data so fast. And you could be like, okay, maybe this didn't happen last month and you don't have to read through all these months, right? Because each month kind of changes. So it makes it a little easier to look at long data.
I love that. So the next question that I have for you is, can you share some practical tips or strategies for individuals looking to enhance their mental well-being through understanding and harnessing their menstrual cycle? I think we've already covered off some of that, but feel free to expand.
So step 1, track.
Mhm.
Even if you're not sure if you're affected the way that I was affected, or maybe the way that you're affected, track, right? There's no reason for any of us not to track. And I think that's first and foremost right off the bat. And if you follow that super simple system, it doesn't even take more than a second in your day. You open it up. I made in my phone 5 tabs in my notes. I open up my phone. Sometimes I don't even fill out all 5 tabs. I fill in whatever I feel is pertinent for the moment. And that's it. Especially when I was really lost. You know what I mean? Like I didn't even have it in me sometimes. But to be able to still look at the data was so insane. So that's my first thing is track. The second thing is to take it to the next step. It's trial and error, right? Not only are you tracking to know, but now you're tracking so that you can make a difference for yourself. Like if I notice that every month, then I go back to spending because it's a common and it's an easy thing to say, but it's like it varies a lot. If I know every month in follicular, I feel like everything's going to be so good and everything's going to be so fine. Maybe I'm spending, but when I get in luteal, I'm what a fucking loser I am. I can't believe I spent $300 on that stupid purse and now the bills are due. And what am I going to do? And why do I keep making this decision? Right. So when we're feeling good, we sabotage, right? Our follicular is our due. What are we doing with our due? And is it homeostatically going to make us feel good during our feel? And that's where that tracking really comes into play. What are my habits? So my habits during follicular, and why I name myself the follicular bitch, is because my habits during follicular were to feel sometimes overconfident and that I could cut people off. Okay. Like, don't need you. I got this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or I also always thought that I can start 18 businesses. You know what I mean? Like all of these, oh my ADD would be off the charts. I'd be like, I have 18. And so really getting to know your own personal folliculars and luteals and ovulatories will really tell you so much about yourself. And once you start really being like, oh my gosh, okay, I realized during follicular I this, during ovulation I this, and during luteal I this, you can start making those homeostatic decisions that really bring balance. The more balance you have, the more balanced your brain is, the more calm you feel, the more easy it is to be homeostatic. And then the less fluctuation there is, all of a sudden you feel like your hormones are balanced when it wasn't your hormones to begin with. It was your choices and your actions out of line with where you are.
I love that. I love that zoom out view. Something that I tend to do is in follicular, I feel really sociable and I want to like connect. And then I start like messaging friends and saying, let's meet up and let's do this and let's do this. And then suddenly my schedule becomes really packed. And then I reach my luteal phase and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what have I done? And now next month looks really like, how am I going to fit all these things in? And then I have to start like cutting it out again. So I have to be really mindful of that because I do need a lot of alone time, like as like a person who I am. And yeah, sometimes around the ovulation time, I can be like, oh, who can I connect with? And then that gets a little bit out of control. So yeah, I love that actually. Like, how do you zoom out and go, like, how am I serving myself in that stage right now in terms of what I'm doing now?
I know in follicular, I tend to be so much more able to get all my things done and stuff like that, right? Because it's a due phase. And so all of a sudden I can get stuff done and I expect the same of others, right? So why didn't you do this to the kids? What I, are you not cleaning your room? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
hello. So I had to realize that, like, girl, just because your functioning changed doesn't mean that that's how you treat people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so ridiculous. But yeah. So I think those would be my biggest takeaways from this is track. And then what do you do with the tracking? See what you can do for yourself to give yourself that peace. It's so nice.
I love that. Yeah, simple. Data. Get yourself some data. Those listening, if you don't have data, get yourself some data. Amazing. Okay. So the next question, we might have covered some of this already, is how do you navigate and address the challenges or misconceptions surrounding menstrual health in your work?
I think one of the hardest things for me is people who desire a diagnosis. That's my biggest challenge. A diagnosis, that's even saying it out loud is such a challenge, right? Because I don't want to negate the fact that there are diagnoses out there. There are. But I have a lot of people that say, well, you can't help me because I have BPD. You can help me because I'm bipolar. And all I could think sometimes is there's something called PME. PME is the exasperation. The E stands for exasperation. So premenstrual exasperation of whatever you are dealing with. So we're not trying to take away your diagnosis, but sometimes that is wants to be used as a scapegoat for not having to do the work. And to learn your cycle and to change these habits it takes time and patience, and it takes you to be actually in tune with yourself and admit a lot of shit. And that is not easy for everybody. And so if you're not in a place where you could admit, oh, this is why I'm behaving this way, this is what I'm doing, and really look at yourself, then it's not something that's going to be easy for you. And I think that's really, really hard, as people are used to, and we are moving away from that. Like, I think that was a trend for a while, to go and want a diagnosis and then here's your medication and whatever. And I do think we're moving away from that a little bit, but at the same time, it's a really hard struggle in that space to dive into this. And I really truly believe, even if you dive into it superficially, you're going to benefit. So dismissing it is the hardest thing, that it's not necessary, that it's not needed, that it's not a big deal, or because you feel like such a failure and you've tried so many things, or maybe you've gone to counseling or you've done this or that, you don't want to believe in one more thing. You don't want to try one more thing, or you're just relying on that for self-preservation. Right. And I hate talking about that, actually. It's really funny because I do feel awkward, right? That's an awkward thing to tell somebody, but it's the truth, like, oh, it's such a weird one.
Something I looked at when you said self-preservation, it made me think of like shadow work. And something that I looked at with mine was like, okay, this is here. So how is this serving me? Like, how am I benefiting from this? Am I getting like help from my partner when I have like this meltdown? Like, am I getting to cancel certain things? Like, how am I? had to really deeply look at that. Like, how was I benefiting from that? Which was super, super interesting. And I could see actually how, I mean, I was willing to look at that because that's just what I've always done, but not everyone can necessarily have that thought process. It could just be stuck in that shadow. And it feels, so as somebody who has had an autism diagnosis, there is a part of you that feels like the diagnosis is somehow going to solve something. And the reality is it doesn't. Actually, it can limit you if you're not careful with how you work with it. Like, I can hear what you're saying, like, it can limit you, and actually it can stop you then looking at other things. And I can't remember where I was going with that. I think like a diagnosis can limit you, and I think it is worth looking at kind of how you're perpetuating or creating what you're experiencing as well, which like the conversation we've just had about the whole month, like, if you're behaving in a certain way around one part of your cycle, like, you are kind of you are creating it in some way because it's serving you in some way. So it kind of feel it crosses over with shadow work here.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. It's really like living in cognitive dissonance. You're letting go of certain habits and you're moving into a new truth. And some of those habits serve you, like you said. Some of those habits are familiar or comfortable or just ingrained, right? And generally, like, layers of generations of sometimes that engraving feelings and thoughts around who you are, how you do things, and what you think about your cycle, because that's a whole nother thing too. In families, is it even spoken about? All of that thing. So there's so many struggles there to get beyond that. There's some families that don't even want to talk about it at all, so that's tough too.
Yeah, like you say, it's an interesting topic, isn't it? The guilt and shame that we carry, and the shame that I carried as 15-year-old me, that having hormones wasn't okay. Like, having those, having that anger that I couldn't express, and then became that shadow, and then came out in my 30s. And once I stopped taking the pill as well, it came out.
That's exactly it. And that's how it was for me too. I was on birth control, and then I went through something in my relationship where I no longer needed the birth control. And when I removed the birth control, I didn't realize that it wasn't just the dissolution of the relationship that was causing the depression. But I thought it was. I thought it was circumstantial, and that my trauma, and that I couldn't handle it. And really, there was just so many layers there that I didn't understand.
Really is multi-layered. We do have to look at it holistically, don't we? And I think back to like where the medical profession sits with this, like, treating one symptom without seeing that whole picture. Like that needs to be influenced, which is absolutely why this work is so important. So I was actually having a conversation earlier over on TikTok about how we start to influence like these structures to, to actually transform and crumble. And yeah, I think these types of conversations are really important. And we both shared, the lady and I both shared that we'd done live events in the past, only like 1 or 2 people had come, but then it's like you don't know who those people are then going to go and talk to. So like that one person that came might talk to 10 people, they might talk to 10 people each. Like you could impact like hundreds of thousands of people from just helping one person, couldn't you? So I feel like these conversations are important, and we don't know how many people are going to listen to this podcast, and go talk to their friends about it. Like we need to get these ripples out there.
And even like what you were saying, you have the autism diagnosis. Well, how does E affect you, right? That exasperation. And you is singular, but it's also pluralized when I say it. You know what I mean? Like you are you. And so how your cycle affects you is going to be somewhat similar, but different, right? Everybody's going to have their own cycle story. Everybody. And it's based on so many things. And so when I talk about, people hiding inside of their diagnosis, it's not even, that I want to take anything away or even add something or anything. It's just saying, when you look at your own cycle story, how does that E and PME change yours, right? What does it do specifically for you? And I think one of the struggles too is that it's a long process. I think 4 years into my learning is when I really realized, holy fuck, I do it now without thinking. It is finally part of me. But every single month is different based on our current situations. And so finding those patterns sometimes takes a while, but also applying new strategy to how to respond to those patterns. You only have 1 month a month, right? You only have that day once a month during that part of your cycle. So it can take a long time for you to say, well, I've tried these things and this is now what works for me. You can't rush it. It's not like any other therapy. You're only in that day of your cycle, that day of your cycle.
It makes me think of human design and reflectors. Like reflectors in human design have to wait a whole lunar cycle. That feels like so in alignment with this. Like you have to wait a lunar cycle before you can tell if you can get another month of data. Like there's something in that, isn't there? Like waiting a cycle, something really
Now I have to wait all the way till next month to try it out,
yeah there's something very like nature focused about that, isn't there? And like, I mean, in general there's this big piece around trusting the seasons. Like look outside, like what's the weather doing right now, what's the season right now, and how do we respond? But it's not just what's the season. For those who are on the podcast, they won't see my hand movements, I'm gesturing at the window. What's the season? It's what's the season as well. It's like the internal season as well as the external season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's it changes as we grow. The whole thing, not only does it change every month, it changes within us, it changes every year. Our circumstances change, our ability to learn, let go, all of the things, or go through something that makes us withhold, right? There's so many things that change every single month. And so, yeah, having to allow yourself the grace and the peace to work through it, it's so huge, it's such a huge factor. And there can be a lot of fear, like I had when I began this process. I was lost. Now, my cycle is the most cherished and beautiful thing that I can't wait to get to every month, the next cycle, and what it's going to show me and tell me about myself and the world that I'm living in. Like, oh, so wonderful.
I love that. And that's the way it should be, right? We should be able to celebrate who we are and the phases we go through and the gifts that they bring and the gifts that our hormones bring. I think that's, we're here the way we are for a reason. So it's beautiful to be able to celebrate that.
And to let your, follicular be exactly what it should be, which is this beautiful world of the possibility to plan and to do and to bring possibility back to your life and to get done and to imagine almost and like allow hope and like the things that it's supposed to be, not just a to-do list, but allow this world of possibility, right? And your to-do list and executive functioning and the things that come better within it, and more positivity and less self-questioning, and like all of that stuff can come in this era. But it also comes with, oh, I tried to start a business, I tried to start a workout plan, I tried to do this, I invited a whole bunch of people over, and I have this hashtag luteal losses, because when you get into luteal phase, sometimes you lose those things. Your executive functioning is not the same. There's all these various things in luteal, because luteal is such a feel, right? Do I feel like washing my face? Do I feel like working out? Do I feel like it? And then you're going to become this person that says, I'm not able to follow through with myself on the promises I make to myself. And you feel like you let yourself down, or you feel like you let others down, or you look at the way other people have let you down. And all of these feels come into luteal, right? And when we just allow ourselves to flow through, that beautifulness, and it's like, how can we allow the duality of it all to come in? What are the things that really matter to me that I started here that I know is going to change here? You know what I mean? Like, how can I also limit myself here to stop overpromising to myself or others? And when I do, to understand that I'm going to be here again. It's okay if I lose it a little here. You know what I mean? Like, I have to lose that disappointment and to feel what's meant to be felt in luteal, which for me now, I use my feel like for how much I love my child or how much I love my dog, right? I allow the feels to be different feels. And when the things come up that are really weird or negative, like this month, I'm dealing with a lot of hard choices in my life. So a lot of stuff came up. How can you work through it to a point where you're thankful for that? Thank you for showing me where my map is misaligned, right? My human inside map is misaligned. And so, gosh, this feeling is like not a great feeling, right? I have anxiety, or I have this, or I have that. How can I be thankful for that? And what can I know that I need to deal with or let go of? And then I think one of the biggest things too is when you're lost in that feel of luteal and you're moving towards follicular, which is a do, you have to examine what that do is going to be. Are you doing based on the follicular feel, and is it good for you or bad for you? So I hate my husband. I want to leave him. I can't even believe it. I saw him look at this girl the other day. In your feel, you could be subconsciously having things that have nothing to do with him. They could. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just making this up. And I notice every month I want to leave my husband. You know what I mean? Right before I get my period, I want to leave my husband. Well, sometimes in follicular, you've worked yourself so up with that feel that your follicular do is an immediate, you know what? I want a divorce. Do you really want a divorce? What are you thinking? Like, how can we dig into that subconscious of what's going on in luteal and get to the truth of absolutely everything? And that's a really deep topic, right? That goes way, way, way deeper when you're digging into finding the truth. And without even saying that your truth isn't the truth, like that's why it's a deeper topic, right? What's going on in all those fields that come up, and what's going on in all your do's? And there's another cyclical thing that I try to talk about too, like, oh, follicular, I wanted to start a business. Luteal, I realized I didn't do so well. So I feel like I'm a failure. And why did I think that I could do that? When I get back into follicular, am I going to trust myself to want to do the things again? And maybe not. And because I don't trust myself here, I'm restricting my do. Well, do you have anxiety in follicular? Now we have to look at, what are you stopping yourself from doing that you want to flow through, right? What are you stopping yourself? Are you stuck knowing what to do, how to do it, where to go? Are there things in your life that are restricting you in certain ways? Like when your anxiety falls harder on certain parts of your cycle, look at it genuinely and be like, okay, if this is more of my do phase, what is going on there? Why do I have anxiety there? right? If I have more anxiety in this space, if you just have it all the time, try to look at the little nuances in the way that it changes. Because I know a lot of women that say, I only have a couple days a month where I actually feel good. Well, how are we cyclically sabotaging?
I love
Right?
that. I love how that expression of anxiety could be a different thing based on where we're at in the cycle.
Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
It's so
I hadn't thought
different.
of it like that. Mm.
So when I work with clients, it's a long process, but it's a long process because we really dig into so many things that traditional therapy can't do because they're not basing it on where you are and what your
Mhm.
body's naturally thinking and feeling with you for you, all the things. You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy.
I love that. I feel that's so important because how many times do, people go on and book in with a therapist and they're like, okay, well, that's what's available. That could be any time throughout the month. Okay,
Yeah.
right. Like we go to that session, how are we feeling that day? We take away homework, with no, like completely
Yeah.
no awareness of the
That
cycle. Like
homework
these
might be the wrong
conversations need to
homework.
be had.
Yeah. It might be the wrong homework for where you are by the time you do it. Right. Like it's such an interesting, weird thing, but simply walking into a therapist's office and them saying, okay, I totally hear all the things you're saying to me. Have you reflected on where you are in your cycle? Do you track?
Mm.
Forget.
So anyone listening to this, if you are a therapist or a coach or a healer of some sort, like start to ask these questions, get in touch with Samantha if you need support, and like start asking these questions today to the women that you work with. I think this is really, really important.
Yeah, it is like worldwide important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There shouldn't be, this disconnect. There just shouldn't be. My last therapist had PMDD diagnosed to her at 22. And when I was going to her and I was telling her the things that I was doing, she was like, well, you're already more advanced than me because I would never have asked anybody about their cycle. I said, but you have PMDD. Why wouldn't you
Yeah,
know? She said, well, we're instructed not to.
because they have to be neutral. Why would you not share that information though, or at least ask a
Like,
question based on a
yeah, she was
intuitive
like, well,
nudge?
because of what we're taught, I've been in therapy for 20 years. I've been a therapist for 20 years and I've never asked one woman. And that just
Wow.
blows my mind. It blows my mind. It's just, I don't know. I don't get it. And I'm so thankful for the ones out there that are conscientious of this because there are some, there's just not enough.
So I'd love to ask you, have you had any particular success stories of women? I'm sure you have, of women, working with their cycle. Like what have you seen happen? What changes have seen happen in your work?
Um, there's a very, when you get really deep in this, there's a lot of women that actually get to the point of self-harm. And I was definitely one of them. And to watch that feeling of hopelessness and helplessness slowly leave, and to see women finally being able to say, oh my God, I thought I was broken, you know what I mean, or
Mhm.
I didn't understand why I do this, I didn't understand why my manic positive behavior was this. I actually, the most amazing, cutest thing ever, I'm not going to open my phone and show you, even though she would totally give me permission. I'm working with a woman and her mom, and her daughter. The woman is a therapist, she's a counselor. um she very specifically has told me that they're not trained to work this way or think about these things. Her daughter has phoned me and texted me in the last 2 weeks to say, you've changed my relationship with my mom and me because now we understand where each other is coming from within our own cycle. That same woman has looked at me and said, oh my God, I know how I sabotaged my relationship. You know what I mean? Like, I know the things that I was doing to sabotage myself. But with the daughter, it is the coolest, cutest thing that she's literally calling and texting me. Thank you so much for changing my relationship with my mom. Thank you. There was one time this person wrote to me, the daughter had said, sometimes I think I'm crazy. Like I feel like I'm just going insane and I didn't understand. And you changed that. And I feel like I get in trouble more during XYZ time because of the way that I act based on my emotions. Um, And that was something that we had to unpack too, right? Because therapist mom honed in on the word crazy. She feels crazy. Oh no. I honed in on I get in trouble more, right? And it was very interesting the way that we looked at it and was able to say, no, 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 no. You go to her and you say, that's absolutely right, girl. We always feel crazy sometimes, and that's not wrong and that's not bad. So let's talk about what to do when you feel crazy, not being scared of the fact that you feel crazy, right? There's a different way of looking at it and talking to our children and bringing that adolescent child into you're okay. You're not fucking broken because things change during the month and all of a sudden you feel differently about certain things, or you feel stronger about certain things, or things bother you more about certain things, right? That's okay. And so I think those are the successes, is making people realize there is nothing broken about feeling different during different times of the month. Like, and then how can you live homeostatically? How can you make sure you don't go and spend 10 grand on something because you feel like that's going to make you feel better, or that's going to make you whatever, or I have so much confidence that it's going to be okay. And so that's part of it. What are you doing, when, and why? It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And I love that crazy is okay. Like it's all okay, because that is such a, I've done a lot of work with my inner teen, and that is like such a crucial time, isn't it, where we take on these I must not be this is too much, and we push it so far deep down that it explodes out of us later in life, and then we have to work around it and we have to integrate it back in.
Parent, the last thing you want to do is, I mean, and we all do it, so I shouldn't say that. I'm not like a, by any means, any perfect or gentle, perfect parent. But um, when you're asking your kids, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Mm.
You know, instead of asking them, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? And if you're dealing with, a woman, a uterine based adolescent, you would say, like, how are you feeling? You know what I mean? Like, let's look at your pattern here, because I'm your mom and I'm here to help you learn your own cycle, right? And so that this today isn't forever, right? So let's see how we can just work through this. Like, oh, it's just such a different feeling, such a different feeling. And actually, there's a story that I tell people on a regular basis when they come to me as a woman and they're a mom. I have a class that I do, parenting through the cycle, and that class, a 1 minute overview is, when you're follicular, and we're just saying, like, let's say you're all good when it comes to, not being too extreme, right? But a little bit follicular. I got this. I can do it. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm actually probably a good parent right now. My brain's focusing. It's not overthinking everything. It's just like telling you what to do. And I'm being really. So, go clean your room. So maybe or maybe not the child is going to listen to go clean your room, but you're follicular. So you're kind of going to be like, no, you're going to clean your room, or however you deal with it when it's follicular, right? But you're kind of more on point and your functioning is on point. So it's going to usually happen. So you have a couple of weeks there where you're like, go clean your room, or go do this, or go do that. And even if the child rebuttals, you're kind of okay with it because you're not overthinking, you're in a do. Now we get to ovulation. And ovulation, you say, go clean your room. And the child says, Mom, it's like clean. Like I've been cleaning it every day. Can't I just relax today? But your ovulation, you're cloud 9. So you're like, yeah, actually, let's like go out for ice cream. We're going to sit down. We're going to watch a movie. We're going to just relax today. It's totally fine. And so for a couple of days, you might do that. And then you're dropped off of ovulation. And you say, you know what? I really think that you need to go clean your room now. And again, this child rebuttals you, and he's like, I don't want to. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I cleaned it for all that time, and we just took a couple of days off. Like, I'm sure it's good enough. But you're kind of dropped into luteal, and so you think to yourself, what the fuck? And you're like, no, go clean your room. And he's like, oh, well, in follicular, you might have been like, not even caring that he did that, and just be like, ta-ta now, right? But now in this luteal, you might be like, you know what? I'm the stupid one for letting us have a couple of days off, because now you feel like you can just tell me what to do. Now you feel like You don't have to do what I say. This is more of your feel coming out. I've lost control. I wasn't consistent. He's not listening. He's an asshole, or I'm the problem by not being consistent. And you start doing these different behaviors that then create like this animosity and this power struggle. And for me, because this is personal experience, this story is me, then I would get to, I can't even believe, you want to know what? I bet you when I said yes to ice cream, it's because I was in such a good mood that day that I just didn't want to argue with you. You know what I mean? Like, I just needed the day off from arguing. So I said yes. I acquiesced. And then and I shouldn't have, right? Because now I'm inside feeling like I'm a little pussy. And so now I'm yelling, you know what? When I ask you to do something, you better just go do it. And I feel validated in my anger because now I've been asking you for 2 or 3 days to do it and you haven't done it. And you asked me no. So I said yes. But then you asked me no. So then I said yes. Then you asked me no. And now I feel like there's some kind of disconnect between what I wanted and the outcome. Right. And instead, but by the time you get done with luteal, like you could just be fighting with everybody. And instead, I had to learn how to create that homeostasis, right? What do I want and why? What's really important to me and why? What matters? You know what I mean? And how am I responding right now due to where I am? So it was huge. It changed my whole parenting journey, like so insanely. There's such a difference. It's so wonderful and beautiful.
I love that. I feel there's going to be so many listeners that resonate with that and going, oh, that's why. So thank you for sharing that story. I feel like that's going to help a lot of people. So we're kind of coming to the end of today's podcast. And what I would love to ask you is, what is the dream? What is the utopia? What do you see in the future?
Please contact me, TED Talk people. Really, I mean, the dream is to get that big. The dream is to be out there and speaking about it. The dream is to have a book, even though my ADHD brain absolutely doesn't want to sit down and do it. The dream is to really, truly have this information so widely out there that it's taught in health class in school. Like mental health is so important and it is not a topic. So I really want that out there. I think that it's one of the most important things that you could do in the world to change the scope of the world. It will change marriages. It will change families. There is not one of us that doesn't have to deal with a woman. And at this point, sometimes when I know somebody, I can almost see where they are. Like you get to know somebody, you know them and their cycle, and you know how to respond. It can be communitized. It's insane. It's beautiful.
I love that so much. Thank you. And yeah, let's create. So that, you know, those listening, let's create more of these conversations. Let's talk about this stuff. So one of the main tips that I've picked up in today's conversation, actually there's 2 main things I've picked up, which is firstly track everything. And the second one is, like, we generally think about like what's going wrong in luteal, but actually like what are the patterns throughout our whole cycle and zooming out. They'd be like the 2 main things that I've like prominent things I've picked up. Is there any other tips that you would share with our listeners, some kind of quick wins or anything else you want to share with our audience?
Challenge yourself to think deeper.
Challenge yourself
to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to really look at, like, I have one day a month where I laugh all day. I used to think I was just in a good mood. Now I know it's secular. Like I cyclically laugh, right? And actually, now that I'm living more homeostatically, I laugh way more often, right? And so by challenging myself and recognizing even the good points, I was able to give myself so much relief and joy that even my bad points are good points, if that makes sense. Like without being a light at the end of the tunnel human, because I think that toxic positivity is bullshit. Truly, I have been able to bring joy to the sorrow. It's just a completely different way of allowing myself to be a human and knowing crazy doesn't mean crazy. Anxiety isn't just bad. You know what I mean? These things are just innately part of us. Allowing that is so important.
I love that. So it's like the closing kind of theme is allowance of all creates sustainable joy.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I will pop your details in the show notes so everyone can get in touch with you. And anything you want to share before we close today, Samantha?
How many minutes do we have to share before we close?
Let's say 1 to 2.
Okay, then probably not. But if anybody ends up wanting to contact me, I would love to share a visualization that I didn't have time to share that walks you through the cycle in a visual way that helps you be able to really see where you're at and why.
So yeah, if anyone would like that visualization, please reach out. Or if you have a link to it, we can pop a link to it in the show notes.
I'll record one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned so much, and thank you for doing such important work in the world.
Thank you so much. I love being with you.
Oh, me too. I really loved it. Right, I'm gonna